The night was heavy with silence until the roar of an engine shattered the stillness. A black sedan raced down the deserted highway, its headlights slicing through the dark. Inside, a man in his mid-40s gripped the wheel tightly, his cold eyes staring ahead. In the back seat, a loyal dog named Max trembled, sensing the end of something he could not understand. Suddenly the man muttered, "You're nothing but a burden," and with one cruel motion flung the door open and hurled Max onto the unforgiving asphalt. The impact tore through Max's body as he yelped in pain, rolling violently before crashing against the hard shoulder. The car sped away without a glance back, its taillights shrinking into the horizon. Max lay stunned, his golden-brown coat dusty and blood-streaked, his breathing ragged. His amber eyes reflected shock, confusion, and a deep wound that went beyond the physical. Alone on the highway, the air thick with exhaust and sorrow, Max whimpered into the cold night, abandoned in a world that no longer wanted him. Max lay broken on the roadside, his body aching with every shallow breath. Cars thundered past, their headlights washing over him, yet none slowed down. The world moved on as if he were invisible. He whimpered softly, dragging himself inch by inch toward the roadside ditch, desperate to escape the endless rush of machines. His golden-brown fur was coated with dust and blood, his scar burning like fire. Why? His eyes seemed to ask the night. The asphalt beneath him was cold and rough, pressing against his wounds. Each movement was agony, yet instinct whispered that he must survive. A horn blared, jolting him with fear, and his trembling legs collapsed beneath him. He lay panting, fragile against the vast indifference of the highway, his amber eyes dim but still clinging to a thread of hope. The night swallowed his cries, leaving him alone, a broken soul in a world too loud to notice his pain. Through the haze of pain, Max's mind drifted back to a memory. He saw a sunlit yard, children laughing as they threw a ball, and himself bounding joyfully after it. His tail wagged furiously, his heart filled with pure devotion. He remembered the warmth of gentle hands scratching his ears, the sweet voice calling his name, "Good boy, Max." That memory was sharp, alive, and filled with the love he once believed eternal. The image shifted to the present, his torn fur, the stench of asphalt, the ache of betrayal. His heart cried out, not just from pain but from the loss of what was. The world that once gave him love had turned cold. He whimpered as the memory slipped away, the laughter fading into the night. His scarred body twitched, yearning for a time when he belonged. Yet even through the agony, the memory lit a faint spark within him, a reminder of what love once felt like. Reality struck again as Max tried to move, pushing his weakened body toward the roadside. His legs trembled, and every step was like dragging chains. He sniffed the night air, desperate for something familiar, but the scent was only oil, rubber, and dust. He staggered, his paw slipping against loose gravel, and nearly collapsed. A gust of wind whipped against his fur, stinging the open wounds on his side. He growled faintly, not at anyone but at the pain itself. Shadows stretched long from the distant streetlights, flickering against the cracks in the asphalt. Max's eyes glistened with exhaustion, but inside them flickered the same loyalty that once defined him. He limped on, step by painful step, toward the unknown. He was broken, but he was not finished. The highway had taken much, yet his heart still whispered the same vow, survive. At last, Max reached the shadow of a rusted guardrail and collapsed, his chest heaving as he lay still. The stars above twinkled faintly, distant and uncaring. He tilted his head back and let out a weak, mournful howl that cut through the darkness. It was not just a cry for help, it was grief, confusion, and longing woven together. His sound echoed against the empty stretch of road before vanishing into the night. In that moment, the world was silent once more, as though even his cry did not matter. His eyes grew heavy, but he refused to let go. He pressed his head to the cold ground, whispering with his spirit what his voice could not, "I will not be forgotten." The howl faded, but within him, something stronger than pain remained. The first chapter of his survival had begun. The morning sun rose, but for Max the world remained dark with hunger. His body ached as he limped into a narrow alley behind a diner, the air thick with the smell of discarded food. His stomach growled loudly, twisting with pain. He pushed his nose into a trash bin, pawing desperately at greasy wrappers and broken boxes. The scent of spoiled meat clung to his muzzle, but it was food, and he had no choice. A torn bag spilled half-eaten fries, and he devoured them quickly, each bite sharp against his dry throat. A worker stepped outside and shouted, "Get out, mutt!" Max froze, ears pinned back, fear surging through him. He darted behind a stack of crates, chest heaving, heart pounding as the man kicked the trash can in anger. The alley grew quiet again, but the fear lingered. Max licked his muzzle, tasting salt and grease, his amber eyes dim with despair. Survival demanded sacrifice, and even dignity was slipping away. Later that day, Max wandered into a vacant lot where stray dogs roamed. Their eyes locked on him with suspicion. A scarred gray mongrel growled, lips curled back to reveal sharp teeth. Max lowered his head, tail tucked, ears flat against his skull. Hunger had brought him here, but danger was clear. One dog lunged forward, barking sharply, and the pack followed with snarls. Max backed up, paws scraping dirt, heart racing. "I don't want trouble," his body seemed to say as he lowered himself to the ground. The pack leader sniffed, circling him, before snapping inches from his muzzle. Max yelped, stumbling back. Dust rose around them, carrying tension with it. For a moment, violence felt certain, but the pack lost interest and turned away, leaving him shaking. Max stood trembling, chest rising quickly, the taste of fear sharp on his tongue. He knew now the world of strays was a war zone he was not ready to join. Max limped onto a street, drawn by the faint smell of bread from a market. A group of humans passed, carrying bags, their voices loud and careless. He moved closer, tail low, hoping for a scrap. But a boy pointed, shouting, "Dirty dog!" A stone flew, striking the ground near his paws. Max jumped back, yelping, his body jerking with fear. Another man raised his hand, chasing him with angry steps. The crowd laughed as Max bolted into a narrow alley, his heart pounding. Behind him, cruel voices echoed, blending with the sting of rejection. His body trembled as he pressed against a cold brick wall, hidden in shadow. His amber eyes shimmered with a question only silence answered. Why was kindness so rare? He licked his wounds, not just the cuts but the betrayal that burned deeper. For Max, humans were no longer saviors. They had become predators cloaked in laughter. By evening, Max's strength faltered as he wandered into a dry field. His ribs showed under his thin coat, and his legs buckled with each step. His throat burned with thirst, tongue heavy and cracked. He sniffed the soil desperately, searching for water, but the earth was dry and cruel. His paws left faint prints in the dust, and his body swayed with exhaustion. Faint breeze rustled weeds, brushing against his fur like whispers of despair. He collapsed near a patch of weeds, sides heaving. He lifted his head weakly, amber eyes clouded with haze. The field was vast, yet it felt like a cage closing in on him. He whimpered softly, his voice barely carrying across the empty expanse. His body begged him to surrender, but a fragile flame inside whispered to endure. Alone in the fading light, Max faced the truth. Survival meant more suffering before any salvation. The night returned with cruel silence. Max crawled beneath an old bridge, the concrete cold beneath his trembling body. His wounds ached with every breath, and hunger clawed at him like a relentless beast. Rats scurried in the darkness, their tiny squeaks making him flinch. He tucked his tail close, curling into himself, amber eyes wide with fear. The city above roared with engines, but down here, it was as though he had fallen into another world, a forgotten place where only the abandoned live. He pressed his head against his paw, the rough concrete biting into his skin. He shivered, not from cold alone, but from despair. A whimper slipped from his throat, low and broken. The silence answered back, offering no comfort. For Max, this was not just a hiding place, but a prison of shadows. Yet as his eyes closed, one thought anchored him: he must endure one more night. Night dragged on beneath the old bridge, until dawn painted the sky with pale gray. Max stirred, his bones stiff, his breaths shallow. As he tried to rise, a soft growl echoed from the shadows. He turned, and saw an older dog step into the faint light. The animal was weathered, fur streaked with gray, scars marking years of battles. His eyes were calm but sharp, carrying wisdom earned through survival. Max lowered his head, his body tense, unsure if this stranger meant harm. The elder dog studied him before saying, not in words but in presence, "You are not the first, and you will not be the last." Max felt something stir. A flicker of recognition. A sense that he had found more than just another stray. This was not an enemy, but a mentor born of hardship. For the first time since his abandonment, Max did not feel entirely alone. The older dog stepped closer, his movements slow and deliberate, his tail steady. Max tensed, but the elder only lowered his head, signaling peace. Max's amber eyes widened, watching as the stranger sniffed his wounds, and then sat calmly nearby. A quiet message passed between them, one of endurance. The elder had survived longer than most, and his calm presence carried authority. Max whimpered softly, laying his head down, and the older dog huffed, almost like approval. The bond was fragile, but it was forming. The world had shown Max cruelty, yet here was proof that not all encounters ended in pain. With quiet dignity, the older dog lay beside him, eyes fixed on the horizon. It was not warmth, not yet, but companionship, something Max had forgotten he needed. The silence was no longer hollow. It was filled with meaning. Later, while exploring near an alley, Max heard faint whimpers. He followed the sound to a box half buried in trash. Inside, a smaller animal shivered. A frail kitten, no older than a few months, with tangled gray fur and frightened eyes. Max sniffed the box gently, his tail low but wagging faintly. The kitten hissed weakly, trying to look fierce, though its tiny body shook with fear. Max lay down beside the box, lowering himself to appear less threatening. He whined softly, his amber eyes urging the little one to trust. The kitten blinked, its fear fading just enough for its head to poke out. For Max, protecting this fragile creature was instinct, a spark of loyalty that pain could not extinguish. The world had tried to break him, but here was a reminder of his purpose: to protect, to guide, to love again. The kitten's first instinct was to run, but its fragile legs wobbled. Max carefully nudged the box closer, his touch gentle despite his pain. The older dog appeared, watching from the side, his expression unreadable. For a moment, silence hung in the alley, broken only by the soft breathing of 3 weary souls. Then, the elder gave a low, approving grunt, stepping back as though to say, "She is yours to protect." Max wagged his tail faintly, curling his body protectively around the kitten. The little one pressed close against his scarred chest, trembling but beginning to calm. Max licked its head softly, the taste of dirt and survival clinging to its fur. In that instant, Max remembered the warmth of family. The alley faded away, leaving only this fragile bond, a promise silently spoken. He would not let harm touch the little one again. As the day brightened, the 3 lay in the safety of shadows. The older dog shifted closer, his eyes focused on Max. With deliberate calm, he growled softly, not in threat, but in warning. The world was cruel, he seemed to say, and survival meant vigilance. Max listened, ears twitching, understanding more than words. The kitten stirred against his chest, tiny body breathing evenly, safe for the first time. Max looked at her, then back at the elder, and nodded slightly, a vow settling in his heart. The older dog closed his eyes, content, as though his lesson had been accepted. Max knew then that he was no longer walking this path alone. The burden of pain was still heavy, but now it was shared. Together they formed a fragile pack, a family born from suffering yet held together by hope. For Max, the journey had just changed forever. The morning air was heavy with silence as Max wandered near the edge of a junkyard. His paws scraped against broken glass and rusted metal, but something caught his eye. Half buried beneath scraps of metal lay a familiar object, his old collar. The leather was torn, the tag scratched, but it bore his name. His amber eyes widened, and a low whine escaped his throat. He nudged it gently with his nose, memories rushing back. He saw his human fastening it around his neck with a smile, heard laughter echoing from distant days. But those echoes turned bitter, twisted by betrayal. His chest ached, and he whimpered louder, pressing his paw on the collar as if holding on to the past. The old dog approached slowly, watching him with calm understanding. The kitten mewed softly, sensing his sorrow. Max lowered his head, torn between love remembered and the cruel reality of abandonment. The truth cut deeper than his wounds. Well, as Max pressed against the collar, a memory consumed him. He was back in the warmth of a suburban yard. His human, the man now turned cruel, had once knelt down smiling. "Good boy, Max," he had said, clipping the collar gently. Max wagged his tail, leaping with joy, licking his hand with pure love. Children had laughed, chasing him across the grass. The smell of fresh-cut grass mixed with laughter, wrapping him in safety. But the vision shattered as quickly as it came, fading into the junkyard's cold silence. Max whimpered, his body trembling at the truth. This man had once loved him but chose to discard him like trash. The betrayal was heavier than the collar beneath his paw. His amber eyes brimmed with sorrow as he lifted his head to the sky, silently asking why love had turned so cruel. The memory ended, leaving Max trembling. The kitten crept closer, tiny paws pressing into the dirt, her fragile body brushing against his scarred side. She mewed softly, eyes wide with worry, as if offering comfort despite her size. Max turned his head, licking her head gently, his amber eyes softening. The older dog huffed, his gaze steady, his silence a lesson. Pain could either break or strengthen. Max lowered his muzzle to the kitten, drawing strength from her innocence. In her fragility he found hope, a reason to stand again. The collar lay beneath his paw, a reminder of betrayal, but the kitten pressed her body against him, reminding him of the bonds yet to be forged. In the quiet junkyard, surrounded by decay, life's fragile promise glimmered between them. Suddenly, footsteps crunched against gravel nearby. A woman entered the junkyard, carrying a worn satchel and a gentle expression. She was a rescuer, her eyes scanning the piles with quiet purpose. Max stiffened, pulling back protectively in front of the kitten. His body trembled, memories of human cruelty flashing again. The woman knelt slowly, lowering her gaze, her hand extended without force. "It's okay," she whispered softly, though her words were carried more by tone than meaning. Max growled faintly, his ears pinned back, fear battling against instinct. Yet the kindness in her eyes was different, softer than the cold stare of betrayal. The older dog rose, his scarred frame stepping between them, his gaze firm as if judging the stranger. The moment hung heavy, filled with tension, trust teetering like a fragile flame in the wind. The woman stayed still, her hand open, her breath steady. Max's growl faded into a whimper, torn between fear and curiosity. The kitten peeked at her from behind his paw, tilting her head with fragile innocence. The older dog gave a soft grunt, stepping back slowly, as if granting permission. Max's amber eyes locked on the woman's kind gaze. For the first time he saw not cruelty, but understanding. His chest rose and fell quickly, caught between the memory of betrayal and the fragile possibility of trust. The woman whispered again, her voice a gentle thread weaving into the silence. Max hesitated, his paw tightening on the collar for one last moment, before stepping forward slightly. The choice was not easy, but survival no longer meant only pain. Perhaps this was the first step toward healing, though his scars still burned. The peace of the junkyard shattered as footsteps echoed with menace. Max stiffened, his fur bristling. The scent was familiar. His former owner had returned. The man, now more cruel than memory, strode in with a rusted iron pipe in his hand. His cold eyes scanned the shadows until they landed on Max. "So you're still alive," he muttered bitterly, spitting on the ground. The kitten whimpered and pressed into Max's side, while the older dog rose, his gray muzzle wrinkling into a low growl. Max's body trembled, torn between fear and rage. His scar burned as if mocking him, a reminder of betrayal. The man raised the pipe, stepping closer, his lips curling into a sneer. The world seemed to close in, shadows tightening. Max's amber eyes locked onto the man's, no longer filled only with fear, but with a flicker of defiance. This was the face of cruelty, and survival meant standing his ground. The man stepped forward, pipe swinging loosely at his side, his boots crunching against gravel. He barked a laugh. "Worthless mutts, all of you." The kitten squeaked, pressing further into Max's chest, her tiny body trembling. The older dog advanced, shoulders stiff, teeth bared. Max's heart pounded as he stood between the human and the little one. Memories of betrayal cut deep, but something stronger surged in him now. Loyalty, not to the man who discarded him, but to the fragile lives behind him. He growled, low and steady, his fur bristling with determination. The man sneered, lifting the pipe higher, ready to strike. The moment felt frozen, the clash inevitable. Dust rose between them, and the air thickened with tension. Max crouched lower, ready to spring, amber eyes blazing with a fire that cruelty had failed to extinguish. This time he would not run. The man swung the pipe with sudden force, the air splitting with its arc. Max lunged forward, teeth flashing, his jaws clamping against the metal, in mid-swing. The impact rattled his body, but he held on, growling with primal fury. The older dog charged, slamming his body against the man's leg. The man staggered, cursing, swinging wildly. Dust exploded around them, the junkyard trembling with chaos. The kitten hid behind a pile of broken crates, eyes wide with terror. Max released the pipe and leapt again, his body colliding with the man's chest, knocking him backward. The man's face twisted with rage, spitting curses, but his eyes betrayed something else now. Fear. Max snarled, lips curling, his amber eyes aflame with the defiance of every scar he bore. The battle had begun, not for revenge, but for survival and dignity. The man regained his balance and struck downward, the pipe grazing Max's shoulder with a sickening thud. Max yelped but refused to fall. His body shook, blood trickling, yet his spirit surged stronger. The older dog leapt again, sinking his teeth into the man's sleeve, pulling with desperate strength. The man roared, kicking violently, his boot striking the elder's side. The sound echoed, and the older dog staggered, pain flashing in his weary eyes. Max's heart roared with fury. He lunged again, jaws snapping, forcing the man back against a rusted car door. Sparks flew as the pipe scraped metal. The kitten cried from the shadows, her voice trembling. The older dog coughed, his frame weakened, yet he growled again, refusing to give up. It was clear he would sacrifice himself if needed, teaching Max the final lesson of survival. Courage was not about strength, but about love. The older dog lunged one last time, his grizzled body slamming into the man's chest. The impact drove both into the rusted car, the man dropping the pipe as it clanged against metal. The elder dog staggered back, his body trembling and collapsed, chest heaving. Max roared with grief and fury, standing over his fallen mentor, his amber eyes blazing like fire. The man scrambled to his feet, but fear had now overtaken his rage. He backed away, clutching his bruised arm, eyes darting from Max's snarl to the kitten's frightened form. For the first time, cruelty faltered. Max stepped forward, his growl low and steady, forcing the man to retreat. The junkyard fell into silence as the man stumbled into the distance, his shadow swallowed by the fading light. Max turned to the older dog, nudging him gently, but the truth was clear. The sacrifice had been made, and the lesson passed on. The junkyard fell into silence, the echoes of the battle fading into dusk. Max stood trembling, his chest heaving as he looked at the fallen elder. The kitten whimpered, curling tighter into his side. From the shadows, the woman stepped forward again, her expression softened with sorrow at the sight. She crouched low, her satchel slung over her shoulder, speaking in a voice filled with quiet reassurance. "It's okay," she whispered, her hand extended slowly. Max growled faintly, protective instincts holding him back, but her eyes carried no cruelty. Instead, they reflected empathy, a mirror of pain she too had known. The older dog lifted his head weakly, giving one last grunt as if urging Max to trust. His body was failing, but his message was clear. Max's amber eyes flicked from the woman to the elder, torn between fear and the fragile thread of hope. The woman reached into her satchel, pulling out a small water bottle. She poured some into her palm and extended it toward Max. The scent of clean water hit his nose, stirring thirst stronger than fear. Max hesitated, his ears pinned back, but the kitten leaned forward, sniffing curiously before lapping timidly at the water. Max's amber eyes softened, his body trembling as instinct battled memory. Slowly, he lowered his head and drank, the cool liquid washing away dryness and doubt. The woman smiled faintly, whispering, "Good boy," as though she knew his name. The elder dog closed his eyes, content, as if satisfied with the choice being made. For the first time, Max felt the edge of trust flicker inside him. It was fragile but real, a bridge built from kindness stronger than words. Night crept in, the junkyard now hushed beneath a velvet sky. The woman gathered scraps of fabric from her bag and placed them gently near Max, creating a makeshift bed. The kitten curled immediately into the warmth, her tiny body purring faintly. Max remained standing, his body taut, eyes never leaving the woman. She did not force him, only sat quietly, her presence steady like a candle in the dark. Max's ears twitched, torn between distrust and the pull of comfort. His gaze drifted to the older dog, whose breathing grew shallow. The elder's eyes met his once more, a silent lesson of courage passed with every fading blink. Max lowered himself slowly, curling around the kitten on the cloth. The woman's eyes glistened with emotion, but she held still, giving him the choice. Trust was not demanded, it was earned. The dawn returned pale and heavy, and with it came the elder's final moments. The old dog lifted his head weakly, his eyes locking onto Max with calm resolve. He huffed softly, a sound filled with both farewell and pride. Max leaned closer, nudging him gently, his amber eyes brimming with sorrow. The kitten mewed faintly, sensing the gravity of the moment. The woman bowed her head, honoring the silent exchange. With one last deep breath, the elder closed his eyes, his body stilling forever. Max whimpered, pressing his muzzle against the grizzled fur, grief pouring out in a broken sound. The woman placed a gentle hand near him, her eyes wet with empathy, but she did not touch. Max lifted his head, his spirit wounded, yet strengthened by the lesson of sacrifice. The elder's journey ended, but his legacy lived in Max's heart. The woman rose slowly, her face solemn but steady. She extended her hand once more, this time with quiet certainty. Max stood, his chest still heavy with grief, the kitten pressed against his leg. His amber eyes flicked to the elder's still form, then back to the woman. A whimper rose from his throat, but his paws moved forward, cautious yet deliberate. He stopped inches from her, lowering his head as if surrendering to possibility. The woman smiled faintly, whispering words too soft to catch, but her tone carried a promise. She opened her arms, and though Max did not step fully in, he leaned close enough to feel her warmth. The kitten clambered into her satchel, her tiny head peeking out with trust. Max's scars would not vanish, but perhaps they could heal. For the first time since abandonment, he chose to believe. Morning light filtered through the trees as Max opened his eyes, inside a quiet shelter room. His body rested on soft blankets, and for the first time in weeks, his breathing was steady. The kitten purred beside him, curled tightly against his chest. Across the room, the woman moved quietly, checking supplies with gentle precision. Max lifted his head, amber eyes scanning the calm space. The smell of clean straw, warm light, and safety wrapped around him like a fragile promise. He whimpered softly, not in fear but in disbelief. His scars still burned, but beneath them lay something new: peace. Later, a child entered with hesitant steps, guided gently by the woman. The little boy froze at the sight of Max, but then his eyes softened with wonder. Max lifted his head, ears twitching, uncertain. The boy knelt, extending a small hand, trembling but kind. Max sniffed cautiously, his tail giving a faint wag. The boy smiled wide, whispering, "Good dog." For Max the sound carried echoes of a past once bitter, but now reborn. The boy's hand brushed his scar gently, not with fear but acceptance. In that moment, Max felt trust blossom again. The shelter courtyard was alive with warmth as Max stepped outside with the woman. The sun bathed his golden coat in light, highlighting the scars that told his story. Kitten trotted beside him, her tiny paws quick against the grass. The boy laughed, tossing a small ball, and Max, after a pause, bounded forward. His legs stretched, muscles straining, as joy returned in motion. The ball rolled across the yard, and Max pounced, tail wagging furiously. The woman laughed softly, tears glistening at the sight. For the first time since his abandonment, Max ran not from pain but toward happiness. Later, as evening drew in, Max rested by the window, his gaze fixed on the horizon painted in gold and violet. The kitten curled on his back, her tiny body rising and falling with his steady breath. The boy sat beside him, stroking his fur, humming softly. Max's amber eyes reflected the sunset, alive with scars yet filled with calm strength. The woman watched from across the room, her eyes glistening with quiet pride. This was not a perfect ending. Pain lingered in every scar, but it was a new beginning. Max sighed deeply, his heart finally at peace with belonging. The final rays of sun faded, leaving the sky painted with stars. Max stepped into the courtyard once more, standing tall, his amber eyes glowing in the moonlight. His scars were visible, but they no longer spoke of defeat, they told a story of survival. The kitten sat at his paws, gazing up with innocence, while the boy leaned against the woman, both smiling quietly. Max lifted his head, letting out a deep, steady breath that echoed like a vow to the night. He had been abandoned, broken and scarred, but he endured. Now, with love around him, he was free.